fiction, science fiction, horror, fantasy, crime, LGBT, thriller.
You have now entered the House of Mystery with your hosts, Eric Shapiro, David North Martino, John Copenhaver, and Al Warren. Heard on KCAA 106.5 FM Los Angeles,
102.3 FM Riverside,
and 105.0 AM Palm Springs.
Okay, we're back, and joining us is Brett Butler. I want to thank you for taking the time to speak with us today.
Hi, well, it's my pleasure. Thanks for asking me.
So now I'm sure a lot of the public knows you from being on television and being a stand-up comedian and things like that, but our show's kind of based in the paranormal, so I'm very interested that you now are doing some psychic work and some readings.
Right.
How did that all start? Like, where did it come from for you? Has it been something you've done all your life?
You know, I didn't really know I could do it until maybe a little bit less than 10 years ago. Looking back, and by the way, all people possess different degrees and different sorts of psychic ability, and they vary in depth and breadth over time. But in my case, mediumship is a rather pronounced, level of the gift, and it sort of hit me. Well, in one occasion about 7 or 8 years ago, and I squiggled around. It wasn't anything I wanted to hang a shingle about or tell people about right away. I actually spent a lot of time double checking and developing it before I told people that it was something that I could do.
Was there a particular event that happened to you that made you go, "Oh, wow, what's this?"
Well, yes, I was with a friend one night, and we were actually she had to get she's a teacher, and had to get art supplies, and we were in a Walmart, and I know the elderly greeter there is, this is in the Appalachian Mountains, actually, in the southern Appalachian, North Georgia. Anyway, we walked by, and I said hello to him, and I think I was pretty tired that night. It was really late, and I remember asking him something about his grandfather and his grandfather's name, the city he was from, which wasn't where we were at the time, and about 8 questions in a row that were specific and all of them answered in the affirmative. And after I was done, he just sort of twinkled and looked at me, no kidding, and said, "Miss Brett, you've got the shining, don't you?" And I remember thinking, what? I mean, I know what it is, but it just sounds bizarre. And I said to my friend, we walked off, and I was sort of embarrassed. I said, apparently I see dead people. And she said, "I've been waiting for you to notice." And then I knew this about my friend. She's my age, and like I said, she's an art teacher. And she'd been in an accident at 17 that killed everyone but her, including her father. And she'd been psychic since then. She never told me that last part. I remember about 20 years ago, I won't say who she is, but a really famous medium and some friends of mine in Hollywood were telling me about her, and I sort of made fun of them. I said, "Oh, you guys are so LA with the psychic things." And they convinced me to get a reading with her, and as soon as we met, the first thing she said to me was, "You can do what I can do," which didn't impress me until the end of our session an hour later, when she'd been pretty specific about some really important things that were wonderful and comforting and mind-blowing in that sense. So when I wrote to her a few years ago thanking her for the heads up and kind of saying, well, I've been slowly giving readings, I call them drive-bys at the time, she wrote back, "Be careful, you don't know the rules." And I'm glad she said that to me, because it made me not only investigate and procure protection for myself and the abilities, it made me want to demystify this whole thing, if at all possible. That's right. A big part of what I do, actually. I'll talk to someone, and I'm certainly not saying I can do this all the time, but a lot of the times I can know how people are psychic, the ways that they're, clairaudient, clairsentient. Sometimes my hands will heat up if I'm talking to someone who could be a hands-on healer. And in that case, I don't always tell people when I perceive them to have a lot of ability, simply because I can't determine if they would proceed with that information in a balanced way. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Oh, totally. And so how have you been developing it? Have you been getting help from someone else that does it, or?
No, I just developed it. I figure if I'm getting that information from Spirit, then there's a lot of information I could get that I work with. First of all, being psychic, there are people, and I've said this before in interviews, who have no moral compass at all, who have strong psychic abilities. It's no respecter of people. It does. If I had any inkling at all to think I'm singled out or special because of this, I would have to discard that pretty quickly based on just the character or lack of character of some of the people that could do this. What I decided is that what would make this special at all for me is that I would claim the protection that's here for me, and I don't discuss the ways that I do that, not because I'm so mysterious, just because it's private and it's probably pretty boring. And that if I put it in the light, that will make it stronger and protect it, not only the gift, but the information that comes through.
So do you think that you got this from your parents, or is it just something, like you were saying, we all have? And how is it for you and your family now?
My family's real proud of me, and I actually have some nieces and nephews that are pretty profoundly gifted in this area, and I'm glad that it happened to me first. My family's known about this for 10 years. My mom's known about it my whole life. She told me, like, when I first told her about this about 8 years ago, she thought about it a while and said, and I'm glad she remembered them. She said, "Do you remember your imaginary friends?" And they were really pretty detailed relationships, and they weren't like my friend Sally and a pretend bunny rabbit. There were two real detailed relationships. Actually, their names were Mr. Promise and the Don Don, and one lived on a mantle and one lived behind a door. And she said I used to do this kind of ritual and make this food called lurchakar. And what was weird is that from the ages of 2 to over 6, when I had these friends, she said I made the food identically, like down to the quarter teaspoon of stuff. And I remember her talking to me about them. So when I told her this, she sort of blurted out, "I think you've been seeing spirits your whole life, and if this is your second act and you don't forget that you're funny too, then I just, rock and roll."
Well, that's good. It's good to be supported. So where do you see yourself going with this now?
I'm not really sure. Every day that goes by, I have something interesting and new, and something that it's hard to explain that, like sounding fuzzy about it. I don't want to. I don't ever take this for granted. I don't assume every day. I know I can be reasonably certain that if I continue to do what I've been doing and stay open to it and don't ever think I'm the source of this stuff, I was afraid the gift would go away if I took money for it, that my abilities would diminish, or if that I were exposed, or, I came out about it. And the opposite seems to have happened with it. I do think I'm special, but for other things. I don't think this is what makes it so. I get a kick out of it every time Spirit comes through, and I'm grateful for it every time. So I'm not really sure. I'm still, I work in show business. Actually, I'm real excited. I just got offered the female lead, and it's a little independent film, but I'm pretty excited. And I'll see how both these jobs work separately and braid together. I had a gig and just a role that they wrote for me in an HBO series, and my clients were really nice about being rescheduled because it was a quick shoot. I had to go to Texas for a few days. And hopefully I can just keep working them both hand in hand.
Yeah, that would be nice. Now, does it change the way your work goes? Like when you're dealing with doing a role or being filmed, And
No.
It doesn't? Well, I mean, do you ever pick up
I'm not
things?
invasive at all with this thing, by the way. I do get signals from people like we all do. Even in a big room, I can get the signal that there's like a butthead in the room, before I even see who it is. I don't invade other people in any way psychically. I just, again, like I said, there are people who have the gifts who aren't moral about it or anything. And I don't think I will ever regret not being that way about it. But not using it for myself. My mom had a funny joke about it. Remember Samantha on Bewitched?
Oh, yeah.
She wouldn't use witchcraft to clean her house. And my mother said, that's silly. That's like people that win the lottery and won't quit their jobs. If I don't use this thing for me, then why have it? So in that sense, I do. I've always, I encourage everyone to work with their intuition. Not insanely, like, don't go spend your whole paycheck on lottery tickets, things like that. That's insane. But, on a day-to-day basis, intuition serves us all. And just, especially for those quick thoughts that appear as a block of knowing in your head that just tell you, like, go a different route or, maybe, check up on someone, that if we follow those things, and I urge people to kind of keep a record of their own contemporary intuition hits. Like I go, just pay attention to how you feel before you go into a meeting, or if you book an appointment for something. Just see what's out there. I think it's real important to keep a foot on the ground at all times with this thing. But like I said, balance is so important, and it's nothing that I do as well as I do other things. So I focus on that.
Right.
That's like I say, there are people, if I told them how psychic I knew they were, they'd probably quit their jobs and buy a crystal ball and, put like a turban on or something. And I don't think that's what we're supposed to do with this.
No. Is there anybody that influences you? Do you see someone out in public now on TV or that you hear on radio that you think, wow, this person's really good, and they really influence you somehow?
I think, Michael Bodine and Joe Hu are buddies of mine, and we have abilities that cross over each other, and also that complement each other. We have strengths in different ways, and they've really been my friend throughout this. They were, especially Michael, who's been so great. He has such a boots on the ground, mystic attitude about the whole thing. Yeah. And Dave Schrader from Darkness Radio has been terrifically supportive about it, encouraging, and because I really was going to kind of keep it under a bushel probably, and just not. I was just fine doing it as it came up in my life. Like I would have people tell me that so and so is bereaved, or maybe give them a reading or something like that. And I, in that sense, I've probably done close to 1,000 over the last 8 years. So I'm really glad. I'm glad they've been so encouraging. I'm glad other psychics send people my way. And lately I've had other psychics call me for readings. So that's very flattering.
Yeah. And so you're doing readings for people now?
Yes.
And so how do people get in touch with you for the readings?
If they go to my website, realbrettbutler.com, they can find out about how to get a reading and do it through there.
So you really enjoy doing the readings?
I really do. I love it. It's terrific. A few months ago, pardon me, I read a woman. I was reading a few people that had, that concerned. I didn't like the readings. I didn't like talking to them that much. They wanted to know people that were in hell, and it was just, like anything, there are people that will probably fall overboard for anything. I have an addictive personality. This struck me as something different, and I asked Spirit, and I thought about it before I asked. I go, I would like to get people that have, I know it sounds like a corny phrase, higher vibrations. I say a prayer. I do what I do before a reading, and then when I actually have the person on the phone or I see them, I say a prayer that's pretty specific. My specific way of circling the wagons. And I guess what's funny is that I will talk to someone and I know right away if they have another agenda. It's I guess it's fun to, maybe try and, debunk the ex-sitcom star that thinks she's a psychic now. I always see when people are doing that, and I actually used to worry if I could read skeptics, and spirits come through for them just as much as anyone else. There's lots of kinds of skeptics. There's the kind of skepticism that I really want people to have. I urge people to think critically, and not just, like, if I'm reading someone in person, I really don't like looking at their faces because people give you too many clues. They help you too much. When I began the mediumship part of a session, I'll ask people, don't help me, please. Just say yes or no. And it's okay to say no to me. It's like I'm sort of feeling my way. It's across, I have several ways that stuff comes in. If I'm hearing things louder than I'm having my usual claircognizance, it usually, and I underline usually, means that the person to whom I'm speaking is clairaudient to a degree. It depends on how it comes in. But once, that's sort of like, I tell them it's like before you really know how to skate, you sort of skate to one thing and hold on to it and then skate to another, and that's what it's like in a reading until you're grabbing a certain amount of information. And again, a lot of the times I can see when people, this is a new thing for me, I haven't ever been particularly clairvoyant, and that I don't really see lights and colors and things like that. Lately I've been able to tell when people have an unbroken circle of light around them. That usually means that they're living a life, not necessarily, they don't wake up like calling Michael and the archangels to surround them with light. It's just people that live pretty clean, upright, moral, uncompromised ways. You build your own light, if that makes sense. Yeah. And I know the word vibration is one of those nebulous psychic words, everything, but this is what all of this is about, high vibrations. And a long time ago, that medium I told you about, that famous one, was telling me that someone on the other side was grateful that I had forgiven them, and explained that it's one thing like Catholicism has, right, about praying for the dead. It lifts us up and it lifts them up. If I just heard from dead people, this would be pretty boring. I mean, their messages are beautiful, but it's pretty simple. It's, we love you so much. We'll be together forever one day if you want to. Please keep being nice to each other. Do not be in a hurry to get over here. And that's where spirits, the souls, can help us. They've lived here before. They know that it's hard and it's skin school, so when it works really well, they try to illuminate the path that we're on, even if it's just a few feet ahead, or help us, help support us in decisions that are coming up in our lives. And this is kind of a new thing for me. And again, it's not in every case, but if I'm talking to a client, and the way I've been seeing it lately is, if the client or someone close to them has been doing genealogical research, it has an interesting effect in spirits. It's like company comes to call on the other side. I'll actually see people in clothes that are from over 100 years ago, where there's no way that my client could have known that person. And the fact is that those spirits are, people who die in our families before we're born, and I don't understand this at all, are often part of our, in our soul, our spirit group, the rest of our lives. But I think it's real interesting that if someone's been doing like Ancestor.com or something like that, that they'll line up. And most of the time, there'll be like a client's grandparent who, I had one a couple of weeks ago, and her dad's dad was really funny. They were from New York, and the people who were gathering from Ancestor.com, he kind of said, "This is for immediate family only," and he goes like, "Show's over, move along." And I got a big kick out of it, because it did look like, in a way, I compare it to, on Gilligan's Island, when the professor got a radio going and had everybody gather around it.
Yeah.
When I first started doing the mediumship thing, that's what I felt like. The portal was clogged. I would get because I wasn't being specific, I didn't know how to do this. And I would get all kinds of spirits coming through. So maybe the first minute of a reading would be an immediate relative of the client or something like that. And then it's like on the other side, if they see their, especially the desert island spirits, or what I call them, the ones who have not gone to the light. And they're not all rambunctious, or just because they're in the lower astral does not mean they're bad, but they're untethered. And I didn't know how to keep them out or, again, protect the reading myself or anything like that. So it would seem pretty hectic. And I don't think it's an accident that when this happened to me, if you will, that I realized I had, among my books, I have a lot of books, but I had about 20 books on metaphysics, and half of them pertain to mediumship specifically from 100 years ago. But I had like 1,000 books, so I mean, I'm bound to have something like 10 on that subject. If it's not science or math, chances are I'll have a book on it. And 100 years ago was what I call the golden age of mediumship, in that first, for a couple of reasons. One, the advent of technology had not quite begun, and it was just a simpler world. Spirit was kind of closer in. And then it really ramped up because of the horrors of World War I and the influenza outbreak, the epidemic that killed. Between World War I and influenza, more people were dying 100 years ago in the world than had ever died at once, aside from the bubonic plague in the Dark Ages. That brought heaven closer to earth and vice versa, but there were also some wonderful mediums, some extremely moral and upright and honest mediums of the day that worked with. Back then, 100 years ago, you could be considered a very smart, stellar part of the international intellectual community and dabble in this stuff. You weren't made fun of like you would be today if you believed in this. Yeah. But people think just because I do this that I believe in Sasquatch, or I don't want to run around like an old mental institution and punk ghosts that aren't people that aren't in the light yet, or things like that. People think just because you're a medium that you're some cryptozoology expert and stuff. I do probably cross over in one nut area, in that I think this is just my own hypothesis. The more I do this, and on occasion, some people, just like in real life, some people have a much higher level. They don't just have dead loved ones around them. They actually have really high guides. Like, it's coming from, it's beautiful. It's like, Brian Weiss.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
His book, Many Lives, Many Masters.
Yeah.
Every now and then I'll do a session with the person, and I'm aware of their masters, their spirits within, their high guides. And it just leads me to wonder if people haven't been confusing angels and aliens for thousands of years.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's always a possibility, Have you ever been interested in getting into going to haunted places, so to speak, or doing any investigations?
No, not really. And because my history in haunted places is that, and again, it has to do with the protection that I have asked for myself. If people who have, for example, can do what I did, I think it's important that I not be bombarded. I think I am a sensitive and an empath. I can tell what other people are feeling and thinking, and you have to, kind of put on your suit about that. Sometimes if I go into one of those places, I won't see or hear the scary thing or whatever somebody else is afraid of. But if I'm next to you, I'll see what you're seeing. Like, I'll give you an example. One woman I know said, this is a couple of years ago, she said, I have some friends with 3-year-old twins. And before she said anything else, I said, the little boy sees spirits and the little girl hears them. And that made her hire me right then. So right as I was going over to their house, I knew that it was an old house in an old house. It was about like 150 years old. And they were seeing a crying old man in that house. And when I met the children, I said, what's the song that you sing that makes the old man quit crying? And what was funny is their parents were both psychologists and did not believe in this stuff and were kind of just treating me like the help when I went in, but they were concerned for their children. Well, the children told me the name of the song. And I couldn't see the man, but I knew what they were seeing. And they were talking to him. They had their eyes up and were looking at him and everything. And I said, well, I said the things I say that I thought might get that man to go to the light. He was a harmless man. He loved the little children. That's why they could see him. Plus, little kids can see things like this longer than we can. So the kids and I told him that his parents were looking for him, basically. And and the little boy was so cute. He says, yeah, he says he remembers now. And I just sort of, I'm sitting there thinking, well, I don't see this guy, but I know that this is what's going on. And all of a sudden, the little girl goes, wait. And the kids who were 3-year-old twins and have that kind of twin psychic connection that they had, and even their own special language, all of a sudden, without a word, the little girl just handed to her brother this giant stuffed bear. And the little boy ran way down their hall and lifted the bear up, like way in the air, and said, you forgot to kiss, like, Mr. Jinky goodbye, or whatever the bear's name was. And from what I heard after that, that was all. He was gone. Do I think I sent him to the light? No, I'm pretty sure I got some help from those kids. I might have helped those kids do it, but they're the ones that did.
Yeah. So, have you ever come across a real negative spirit or sort of demonish sort of thing when you're doing a reading?
Yes, I've seen things like that. I really don't discuss them just because I don't want to give them the energy. Oh yeah, they're out there.
Right.
I see them connected to other people all the time. Look, it would be so easy in life if evil wore a T-shirt in the room and identified itself. But the fact is that evil is usually an aspect of something that is not altogether terrible. That's what makes it confounding, confusing, and frightening. They say Lucifer was an angel who was God's favorite and then fell. And while I was saying that a while ago, look, I'm sure there are fallen angels and or malevolent extraterrestrial entities. And I'm also sure that it's not going to be my lot in life to be taken by them, abducted by them, implanted. I used to not believe that stuff, that happened to people. That's not what I believe now. I do believe that I think people have much more power about control of those situations than they know. That if you're in a different way, if you're a victim in this life, in this world, you're going to be a spiritual victim as well. And that there are definitely things you can do to stop that and protect yourself. It's sort of like, just like there are interventions for sobriety, there's spiritual interventions that people can make on their own, too. You can white knuckle it, or you can get help,
Yeah. So has this changed your religious point of view? Has things changed for you that way?
Nope. I've always believed a certain. I don't really like religion with the rule book, but what I believe, I knew that what I believed was a big, merciful, humorous, unrelentingly wise God, and that has not changed. It just broadened.
Yeah. And so, do you feel like just?
I do. Well, wait. It does change me about. I get so pissed off when people use a God of love and of illumination, and there's a loving way that we're all instructed about how to be better people. And when people, it takes two to tango. If someone threatens you with hellfire and you actually change your life because you're afraid of hell, it just seems so why not change your life because things are just delightful in the light instead of being afraid of someone else judging you? I don't believe in a God. I think most people have a hard time getting our heads around how much the Creator loves us, He's certainly not waiting to kick our butts when we come home.
Yeah, yeah. And
I've seen as many negative spiritual entities around religious people as I have supposedly godless pagans. That religion and spirituality are not hand in hand. They can be, but they don't really have that much to do with each other in spirit. Or as one old guy told me on the other side, he laughed, and he actually used to be a very devout so-and-so in his religion, and he said, as it turns out, there's no seating chart over here.
Yeah. So yeah, and lately there's certainly been a lot of that brought forward, with everything going on, like the, gay marriage.
What?
And,
those people. I think, what, frankly, if those people that holler about people going to hell, if those people are the ones in heaven, I will just buy sunblock.
Yeah.
I don't even want to be around them. It's horrible. And I'm not even just talking about the Westboro Baptist Church people who are living in hell, basically, to believe that.
Yeah.
Or it's sort of like a friend of mine who is a fan of and an expert on some of the wildest conspiracy theories, and he was asking me about several, and he said, do you think they're true? And I said, if you believe them, then they automatically become true for you. Yeah. Whatever we believe is true. It's just, the nature of belief and truth. It doesn't mean I think it is, but they do.
Right. It's our own reality,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, totally. And so, now, so where do you see? You don't really know where you're going to go with this. You don't know if you're going to go.
Well, who does?
Yeah, that's true. I mean, none of us really know, do we?
Right. I do have a feeling that it's funny, like, I'll give you an example. I think it's like 20 or 12 years ago. I told my boyfriend, I don't think I'm going to have a problem with hecklers anymore. And he said, oh, honey, there'll always be hecklers. I said, I didn't say they wouldn't have them. I said I wouldn't have a problem with them anymore. And I got a kick out of it because I go, well, look, I've been a comedian for 20 years, and you sort of begin to know the things that can show up or the things that can happen. And it felt really good last week. I was doing something. I was just cleaning my house, and I realized that I was proud of what I do mediumship-wise, just like I am comedy. And it took some time. Comedy was something that, like, before I fell asleep at night, I would have this, right before that hypnagogic state, right before you sleep, I would see myself on stage at a more advanced level than I was then and doing really well. And then time would pass, I'd do more shows, and then my stand-up would get to that level that I had in that reverie. And then the reverie would advance again. I don't really have the same kind of images of myself as a medium because it's not performance-oriented to me. I mean, I suppose to an extent it is. But I know that my comfort level with it grows every day. And I try and be honest with people. Pardon me. I'll be talking to them, like, early in the reading, I can tell whether stuff is usually going to come through or not. And I was talking to a woman a few weeks ago, and I just went, you know what? I asked her a few things, and I said, you know what? I'm not getting anything. And she goes, oh, I know I'm a hard read. And I said, I'm not blaming you. And I'm not saying I'm a bad medium. I guess I personally I have difficulty with any psychic saying that they're on 100% of the time. And I told her, I said, if nothing comes through, I'll bounce your PayPal back. I basically said, if this were all I could do, I never would hang my shingle as a psychic. Most of the time, when I say that, something shifts in the reading, and then information starts to come in. So I think if I stay honest with it and be in the moment with it, then I'll get what I need, and hopefully, what's more important is the person getting the reading will get what they need.
Yeah. Why do you think there's hecklers, or so to speak, about mediumship?
Because I think there's plenty of partially formed humans out there that just blurt things out. It's a combination of not being brought up well and not being committed enough to their own excellence not to resent what other people are trying to do on their path.
Yeah.
I try never to worry about things that happen to me. I get more annoyed when there are people who heckle spiritually. There are people that excuse the expression, piss on other people's parades all the time. People like that irritate me. But I like knowing that, and I'm not saying this in a vicious way, that karma operates moment by moment in this world. And that usually if someone is behaving spiritually or literally in ways that are unconscionable, and I urge people not to wish bad things for anyone, because, and I don't walk around knowing this all the time, we are all connected. And when those people, just the fact that they're who they are, or as my mother put it, there's nothing so bad you could wish on that guy that being himself isn't worse than. Just being who they are is the payback.
Yeah. And so how do you deal with that, like personally? It's
What do you mean?
Well, it's interesting to me because, like, you know, when if you get negativity or negative people saying things on, let's say,
I don't hang around it. I just sort of have a blank feeling about it. Like I say, I don't. If I cared what, like it's sort of like seventh grade mentality. It's seventh graders. Like gossip is juvenile. I worry more about cruelty to other people. I just move on. If why anyone would stand in the line of fire for an abysmal, reaction from someone, things like that aren't necessary. Why do you stay around that? It's sort of like walking, stepping in piles of things on purpose. There's, I don't deal with it.
Yeah.
That's how I think that's a clue to happiness. Is you ask people who are happy tend to go to the light while we're alive, and that's what makes then when we die we cross over. We're real at home with what's over there.
Where do you think that is? What's your opinion on the afterlife?
Oh, it's whatever we live like here is going to color that a lot. There's no one place. There's no pearly gates that looks the same for all of us. The afterlife is as different as the different kinds of people who are alive. And anybody that says they have a chart of how it is over there, I would kind of tiptoe away from.
Yeah. There's no. They don't know any more than anybody else. There's no answer. Yeah.
Right. Well, some people do know more, but I tend to think those are the people who are pretty quiet.
Yeah. The more you know, the less you say. Yeah. Well, it's been a pleasure. So
thank you.
Let's talk about how people can get a hold of you, if they need to contact you or if they need to send you a message or something.
RealButler.com. My assistant Wesley takes care of everything. RealBrettButler.com is the website. You can get the info on a reading. You can book one. You can send email there, and he'll get things to me.
That's fantastic. Well, I really appreciate you taking time and talking about what's going on.
Thank you, and thank your listeners, and thanks for being curious and for putting these subjects up in a way, and you being so thoughtful. I just would love if people who look. I tend to think that skeptics skew a higher IQ than people who believe everything that comes across their path. But I also think skeptics wouldn't be harmed if their minds were open a little bit more, and I think your show really helps with that. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Show's over for now.
Was it as good for you as it was for me?
Well, good night.
This has been a production of the Z-Talk Radio Network.
I'll be back.